We've done it. We've done it. We made it here. Not gonna lie to you guys. Right off the top, I'm feeling sick. Woke up with a big old headache. Don't think it's COVID. Don't think it's COVID. Good evening to you, Eric. But boy, howdy, do I feel rough around the gills. I feel real depleted, real tired. And you know, part of it, without a doubt, last night I was sort of thinking about the mass shootings that are going on. And people are getting really stuck on the July 4th one, which makes sense, right? It's a mass shooting that occurred, amidst celebrations. We're supposed to be celebrating our nation. We're supposed to be celebrating the founding of the country, right? Declaring the independence and all. And we have a mass shooter come through. Seems very poignant. But the thing that I'm struggling with, hey, Anemone, how are you? The thing that I'm struggling with was that my own reaction to it. Like, I just don't care anymore, right? I just don't care anymore about these mass shootings. They're just like, they're not really worth reporting on anymore. I did not get my hair cut, Andrew. Thank you. I think it's all just tucked away in the back. Good to see you, Andrew. Good to see you, Barnabas. Yeah. It's beyond fatigue, It's beyond fatigue. Because fatigue at least implies that, there's a desire to care, or there's a desire, right? But what I feel I'm experiencing is straight up just like, we know they're not going to do anything about it. Like, that's just a fact. We know the Americans are not going to do anything about it. They are not going to confront it. They are not going to do any legislative change. They are not going to even require basic licensing. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to change a thing. And right now, the way the Supreme Court is configured and the way that the electoral system, if you want to still give that any credibility in the United States, is configured, they are going to explicitly protect guns and gun rights and increase the amount of rights and increase the availability. So it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Structurally, on purpose. It has to get worse. And I mean, I'm a Canadian. There's only so much caring I can do about this, right? And I can't possibly care about it more than the people who are affected by it, because it's clear that the people who are affected by it don't care at all. Not really. Right? Not really. Like, where is the mass protest? Where is the shutting down of infrastructure? Where is the demand from the public? It doesn't exist. Well, that's the only way there's ever going to be a change on this. So I just can't care about it. It's why I don't really talk about it on the stream anymore. It's why I don't really talk about it in videos or anything like this, because I don't care. I can't care. Right? Because me caring about it, like, there are people who lost loved ones. There are children who lost parents. There are parents who lose children. If those people are not fomenting revolution and protest, and if those people are not gathering power around them, if those people are not actually gaining traction within the public in order to surround the halls of power and do something serious, well, I'm not going to put the energy in for them, especially not here in Canada. And it's lamentable. You know, it's lamentable. I would love to stand in solidarity, but there seems to be no one to stand in solidarity with. Seems as though everyone has just sort of bowed their head to it and been like, yep, we're just going to kill each other every day. There's a mass shooting in the United States every single day now. And it's just a symptom. It's another symptom of this capitalist decline. And that the capitalist ideology of more for me is starting to really rear its head. And we're starting to see that, like, yep, there are winners in that system. And the winners are psychopaths. There's no two ways about it. Oh yeah, credit card debt. I had my I made the mistake as a younger man getting into student loan debt, which I've gotten away from now. But I have people around me who are trying to convince me, like, you know, John, you should build your credit rating back up. You should go get a credit card and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, nah. Like, I view credit cards and that kind of debt as a trap all the way around. It's like a constant temptation in your life that, oh, you could just put this on your credit card. Oh, you could just put this on your credit card. They want you to get into debt. They want it. Because if they can get you on the hook, then they can keep you there. Right? Well, Eric, I know that the bankruptcy rules are, you can, if you're a Canadian, and I think you are, you can bankrupt out of student loan debt after 7 years. Right? So if you are 7 years out and you're still wallowing around in that debt, you can go, and it costs $2,000 to do, but you can bankrupt out of it here in Canada. They haven't changed the laws that way yet for us. If you're in America, you're totally screwed. Student debt is one of the few debts that you can't bankrupt out of in the United States. Because it's a completely corrupt system, right? Yep. I had a credit limit of about $1,000, lost my job, couldn't find a new one for years. Took me almost 3 years to pay it all back. I had other bills that need to be paid. Yeah. Because instead of creating an egalitarian system of support to ensure that someone like yourself would always have a fallback to rest upon, we cede that to psychos who basically are just vampires siphoning away your wealth, right? That's the whole point. That's the whole idea, right? It's to constantly keep their thumb on your back. I can't do that yet because if I do declare, I can't get more student loan until I pay off my student loan. I don't want to get more student loan for my master's and doctorate. Well, that's all you, Eric. That's all you. I've never stayed in debt long. Good to see you, Methane. I've never stayed in debt long. Took me less time to pay off my student loan than to accumulate it. The trap was obvious to me. Pretty much a hard rule. If I can't afford it, I don't get it. Yeah, that's the wisdom. You know, that's the wisdom. Part of the issue with the way this system is structured is that we say to a group of people who don't necessarily understand what money even is or how it operates or any of this kind of stuff. We say, like, kids, we say to kids, hey, do you want to take on like this enormous debt? And for kids, there's a lot of like trust falling that happens in this arrangement, right? That they get into it being like, well, all the adults are telling me this is what happens. All the adults are telling me that this is the way to do it. All the adults are saying this is what we should do, right? And all the adults are going along with it. And so I'm going to just trust fall into this. Not realizing, of course, and many of the adults themselves don't even really realize it's happening, that the system has gone psychotic. And while you're busy trust falling into the system is configuring itself to betray you as ruthlessly as it possibly can. And you can see this is the truth by how they treat the people who they abandon, right? That if you can't get the job, or if the industry changes, or if they cut all the funding for your industry, or if the thing that you were taking becomes obsolete the minute you graduate, right? Like if these things happen, well, you're just a loser who needs to work harder. Go back and retrain, right? Like this is the gaslighting that happens in the society. And there is no integration between the work that needs to be done and the education that's being taught, because the education system is a complete and total scam, in my opinion. Like, all of it is a complete and total scam. That an actual education system, I was actually just training people vocationally for their jobs, would integrate the education into the job, that you would do on-site learning, right? That's exactly what would happen if they were actually training people to do the jobs. And then, of course, any concept of, like, educating people so that you can have an educated populace, well, that just goes out the window, right? Like, I think about the primary benefit of my education was that I am no longer a fundamentalist Christian. Like, that was the true benefit of my education. That I went through an educational system, and through the process of my education, I went from being a fundamentalist Christian to no longer being a fundamentalist Christian. And we're seeing now how that kind of thing is probably a benefit to the society, especially as the fundamentalist Christians start to take power, and we see how insane they actually are. The apocalyptic death cult that's coming to seize power, who views climate change as a positive because it means that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment. So, but the idea that we should be educating people so that they can have these foundational changes, so that they can actually operate in the society not as psychopaths and not as lunatics, but as reasonable people who are attempting to make decisions based on evidence that they see in front of their face. We can't have that. We're not interested in that. We just need, as Barnabas says, right? Education is here to train slaves. That's what it's for. And who are the people who get the best jobs? The most obedient. It's the only thing they're testing for. Hey, Mocht, how you doing? I noticed a similarity between them blaming the working class and the imperial core for being poor due to their laziness, and then blaming the impoverished shantytown dwellers and refugees in the third world for being poor due to their laziness or overpopulation or genetic inferiority. Yeah. It's anything except the ruthless psychopathy of the rich. Like, literally, that's the entire strategy. Find any excuse that anyone will buy that is not the truth, which is that we have a ruthless psychopathic oligarchy that's in charge. Like, if you have that kind of ruling class, you will always end up with poverty. It will always be the case. Because if you didn't have the poverty, then you wouldn't have the rich. I want churches to go bankrupt from a lack of donations. I mean, we are seeing that across Canada. Like, more and more people are beginning to recognize that the churches don't really do what they claim to do, right? They're not actually fulfilling a purpose. Most of the churches exist in order to just run their own kind of a scam. And that scam is very clean, right? Maintain the system of poverty, vote for people who are maintaining the system of poverty, and then, open up your Bible and read a couple of passages about how we should help the poor, so that you get liberal-minded people to tilt their head and go, and throw a couple of dollars at the church. And then you take a very small percentage of the donations that are given, and you run like a potluck on Thursdays, so everyone can be like, wow, they're helping the community, right? So vote to maintain the system of poverty while doing piecemeal tokenism to pretend to care about alleviating poverty while you pocket the money from the people who are sending it to you. It's a classic grift, right? And every single church in, like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're a rabbi, a priest. Like, if you are in the profession of spirituality in this society, you're a grifter by definition. And the only spiritual leaders who should be taken seriously whatsoever are the ones who take to the streets, who do as Christ would do, right? To actually fight back against the power structure, and none of them are doing that, so none of them are valid. They're all grifters to an individual. Yeah, not to mention Ivy League schools who can run companies right out of graduation. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of going to an Ivy League school, right? Is that you get to, and I mean, what do these Ivy League schools produce, right? They produce people like Mitt Romney, right? Mitt Romney's entire job was to just dismantle other corporations. It was like vulture capitalism, like hostile takeovers, that kind of thing, right? Like, that's what these guys do. Like, that's what they are. Pretty sure if the Vatican is backing them up, it's impossible for churches to go out of money unless they want to. It will always have more than everyone else combined. Yeah. I mean, the Vatican is one of the largest landowners, right? And if you own land, you can't really be run out of business. Buddhists are pretty non-hypocritical, but if you ask me, a lot of Buddhists are withdrawal. They withdraw, right? So they're not trying to, like, run the grift, but they're trying to withdraw from the society. But every so often you get a story about, it's usually a Buddhist that goes and lights himself on fire somewhere, right? Yep, the bread cult. That's what I'm saying. I say it again and again, guys. If I were to turn this into a cult, I think it would be way more successful, right? I think I would have more people watching. I think I would get more donations. People love cults. People love cults. I found a YouTube channel today called Black Power Media, a leftist channel, and some of their videos is debunking the Uncle Thomas Sowell, and the current video that I was watching before the stream. They're talking about how Thomas Sowell is lying by omission. Yeah, that's Thomas Sowell's shtick, right? He just doesn't tell the truth, right? He just hyper focuses on a couple of variables and pretends like those variables are the picture. Right? It'd be like looking at the Mona Lisa and just focusing on the background, ignoring all the systemic issues that the black people were subjected to that led them to poverty. What Thomas Sowell is trying to argue is because of individuals trying to be redneck, a culture they pick up from the Irish. Yeah. No, it's that classic individualism nonsense that is falsifiable on the face of it. Like, of course people are affected by their environment. Like, of course they are. Of course the society that they live in has more to do with what happens to them than their own individual choices. Like, I actually think it's quite babyish to think otherwise, right? Like, if you are born in a majority English-speaking environment where the vast amount of the wealth has been collected because of pillaging and theft, right? You're going to speak English and you are going to benefit from the pillage, right? Like there's just no two ways about it. And to pretend otherwise is just baby talk, right? But that's basically where we are as a people. Hey, now give Romney some credit. He also basically changed the landscape of modern music by using monopolistic power over radio to promote Christian and Christian adjacent music. Thank you, Andrew. That's correct. Look, what's your take on JP getting shit on? I need a laugh. His most recent video, I'm not going to play it here because I have a strict no video playing thing because my stuff gets demonetized when I play any videos. If you haven't seen Jordan Peterson's new video about how he got suspended from Twitter for his transphobic, like overtly transphobic commentary, it's quite sinister. Right? Like the reaction from the populace is this kind of snickering, poking fun at, mockery, which I think he's due, but I found it to be quite threatening and quite sinister, quite dark. Like he's saying things like, "We'll see who cancels who," and when you consider the history of white supremacy versus trans people, it's very difficult to take that as anything other than a direct threat. That it really does seem to me like Peterson is creating a little cult that is going to be instrumental in rounding up trans people when the time comes. Like, Peterson has turned himself into an extraordinarily dark figure. And I found that video to be very unsettling. Like, if you want to go somewhere else, like lots of people have shit on this video, and lots of people are shitting on Jordan Peterson over it and having a good laugh. That's great. I didn't find it funny at all. I found it very, very unsettling. And it's very easy for me to believe that an acolyte of Peterson's is going to be heading the charge against the trans community and really seeking to round these people up and really seeking to do major damage. Like, and with Peterson's blessing. So I didn't find it funny. Boy, am I in a dark mood, man. I woke up with just this massive headache. I feel sick. I feel dumb. I feel gross. I feel all the things. I feel all the things. And just recognizing in myself that, like, you know, just recognizing like just recognizing that it's going downhill, eh? Like, there's a little part of me that still wants to believe that we can pull it up. And we could avoid it. But I don't think we can. I just don't think we can. I think we still need to fight. I still think we need to take to the streets. August 1st, 4 p.m., Bloor and Bedford, we're protesting. Please come. Please come. But it just looks like it's not going to improve anytime soon. And it's shocking, I think, that it's shocking that we're not, like, taking to the streets, that we're not taking over infrastructure, that we just keep going to work. It's shocking. Didn't JP argue Hitler was not bad? He was just OCD on cleanliness. I don't know enough about that to talk about that. Jordan Peterson has talked about Hitler and Nazis with a kind of reverence almost. Like, he's fascinated by them for sure. Like, he's fascinated by Hitler and he's fascinated by Nazis without a doubt. Like, yeah, I think it's a fascination for him. Well, that's craptastic. Sorry you're not having a good day. I'm like that more often than not now. Yeah, I mean, I try to do my best to keep my head above the water, but, sometimes the universe wants you to have it. So, Union's probably going to be on strike pretty quick now. UFC W247, basically all Loblaw stores in BC will be locked out. Yeah, good. Like, good. Like, if every working person should go on strike. Like, what we are experiencing is beyond unacceptable. It's beyond unacceptable. It's like literally we're looking at a toddler with a gun, and no one is thinking maybe let's take that gun away from the toddler. Like, it's well past unacceptable. And the people who are seizing power in the country are lunatics. Like, overt, unrepentant, not even trying to hide it anymore, total lunatics. And we're just going to work. Staggering. Yep. The last offer was basically minimum wage and fuck you for asking, so that's going to be rejected. Well, and I find that, like, the people who are going on strike, right, they're begging for scraps. Like, that's what I'm really finding. Like, that they're begging for scraps. Like they want a 1% increase in their wages or something, right? Like, and I'm just getting, like, no. It's time to start demanding very serious things. And telling these guys, like, if we don't get this, we're not participating in your nonsense anymore. Like, you're making $0 now. If you do not respond rationally. Like, workers should own shares. They should be shareholders, right? Workers should own huge sections of the business. Like, workers should have at least 50% of the shares of these companies. The idea that the working class is just basically told, here's your minimum wage, get fucked. Like, no. The ownership class should get fucked. Like, these people who do not work, who provide no value whatsoever, who exist exclusively to extract wealth from the society and then turn around and abandon it. Like, these people should have no power. They should not be in charge of anything. The fact that they still exist is like a holdover from monarchical Europe. Like, we literally should be standing up en masse and telling these people to get completely fucked. And it's not a negotiation. This is the thing that kills me the most about these unions and the populace and all this. They're acting as though it's still a negotiation. Or that it will be a negotiation. And that the rich people in the society are going to act as though it's a negotiation. And it's not a negotiation. That if I had my way, and if the left in this country actually began to organize itself properly and actually seize power, these simpering losers would cry about how we're asking too much. And our response will be, this is not a negotiation. You people are thieves and liars and psychopaths. We are taking from you that which you took from us. And you are going away. And that's your best case scenario, is for you to simply slink into the shadows and be forgotten. But if you would like, we can continue. And if you'd like it to turn into a negotiation, then that negotiation starts with, how long are you going to be in prison? That's where we begin negotiating. Like, this isn't a negotiation. The sun is not going to negotiate. The rising sea levels are not going to negotiate. The famines are not going to negotiate. And yet we are. Staggering. Staggering. Mocked is saying he tried to humanize Hitler, which you can't really do, considering he presided over the deadliest war in human history that even other white supremacists found fault and disgust in. Yeah, I mean, like, I actually think it is somewhat important to try to humanize Hitler, because Hitler was a human in a human society. I think it's far more important to point out that Hitler is the inevitable end result of all capitalist societies. That you will always end up with a Hitler. That power will always empower people like Hitler and elevate them and escalate them into positions of power. Right? You will always end up with this kind of a thing. And you're seeing this in our society. Iran, Russia, China to run war drills in Latin America. You're seeing BRICS summit, Beijing declaration, right? We support talks between Russia and Ukraine. Statement on the G7 statement on support for Ukraine. So here's your battle lines, right? Your BRICS versus G7, right? Video games of the future will be like the BRICS organization. You could play as the BRICS organization, or you could play as the G7, right? Like the battle lines are being drawn between capitalist nations. And we're going to experience another major capitalist war, because that's what capitalists do. That's how they talk to one another, ultimately. It's Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil. Yeah, let them in art school. I say that all the time. Like, look, Hitler is an interesting figure in this regard, right? Like, Hitler's art. Like, he was good. Right? He was good. I've seen shit like this in, like, the Canadian Royal Museum. Right? He was good. Like, say what you like. He was good. People say that it's derivative. Is what they say of Hitler's artwork. And I'm like, how many landscape artists have I seen in... And like, that's... Like, this is good. Like, this is like a fantasy novel, you know? Yeah. The issue, of course, is that Hitler was existing in a post-World War I environment. And things like this, like the arts, right, were completely dismantled. There was no arts in Germany during that period of time, right? Like, what's shocking about Hitler is that he was obviously a rampant anti-Semite and clearly able to be swayed by the powerful people in his society. Like Ayn Rand, he was simping for capital. That's really my view. Like, instead of taking the communist view, and instead of saying, like, hey, there are owners and there's problems going on in the society, and there's a power structure of wealth that we should confront, right? Instead of doing a proper analysis of his society, his position was, let's round up the Jews. Like, it's amazing to see how far racists are willing to go. He was no Bob Ross. Well, I mean, of course people, when they present Adolf Hitler's work, they want to shit on it, right? Because clearly you can't, like, this indicates a kind of complexity, right? Like, humans are complex and difficult creatures, right? We're able to hold many different thoughts and many strange things in our mind. And, like, it does make you wonder, right? Like, if a man like Adolf Hitler had have just been permitted to be an artist, permitted to pursue painting, right? Permitted to pursue this kind of thing. You think about a man like him and the personal humiliation that he likely encountered. And the humiliation that most Germans were experiencing during this period of time. And his railing against the Treaty of Versailles and his railing against the humiliation by the hand of the Allies post-World War I. Like, it's easy to see that you end up with somebody who is angry, who is deeply angry at the position of his society and the position of what's going on, and has chosen to fight back. And of course, where it becomes dangerous is that he pushes his chips in with the industrialists of his society. Those are the people who fund him, right? On the promise that he's going to eradicate the communists and the Jews, which he does. Hitler's family may have been poor farming peasants, but he himself wasn't aligned with average people. He had 500 guilders, 12,000, in a savings account at the age of 6. Yeah, I mean, again, that adds to the complexity of the man, for sure. But it just shows you, like, let's be straight. Like, Hitler was a racist who loved industrialists and worked on their behalf. Right? Like, he wasn't a communist. He wasn't trying to improve the society through material gain or through the gain of the average working person. He wanted to exterminate large groups of the society. Like, that's who he was from the beginning. And the true sinners in the conversation are the people who funded him, are the people who knew about Mein Kampf and said, here's the guy, right? He was definitely not a photorealist. He's high school art teacher level, in my opinion. Good, but not great. Yeah, I think that's a fair critique as well, at Anemone. Anyway, let's get off Hitler. Although we're seeing more of this, we're seeing more of Hitler coming back. It's very difficult for me to perceive how we avoid a war, right? Right? Iran, Russia, China to run war drills in Latin America. Well, why are they doing that, do you figure? Right? Why are they doing that, do you figure? Like, the BRICS group includes Brazil, right? They're running drills. Where exactly are they doing it? Yep. Venezuela is scheduled to host the war games, right? So here we are building up, like, showing credible war games and showing credible military strength right off the fucking coast of the United States, right? Like, if this is happening here and they're doing war games here, like, that's a fairly substantial show of force. Yeah, stop any U.S. coups, for sure. Like, it has all of that kind of, like, if the United States wants to come in here and start fucking around, They've got some heavyweights to deal with, right? And we have seen in the past how effective this has been in the Middle East. Like during the whole war on terror, the United States was desperately trying to overthrow Iran. They wanted Iran to be overthrown. It was part of the goal to overthrow Iran, and they never could. They were never able to. And why was that? Because Iran had pretty strong ties to China. And the United States knew that if they got into it with Iran, then they were essentially in a proxy war with China, and one that they didn't think that they could win. So they never actually did the invasion. Because unlike Iraq, like Iraq was always a United States vassal state. And so it had nowhere to turn. Same story with Afghanistan, right? Afghanistan was always just kind of an independent thing that itself had been destroyed several times before. So if the United States couldn't get into Iran because of the connection to China, well, now we're looking at places like Venezuela, like Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, right? Brazil itself, which actually has formal agreements with China. Like, the United States is not going to be able to actually control this territory any longer. They're not going to be able to do anything here, because everything that they try to do here is going to result in a proxy war with China. And they can't win a proxy war against China. They don't have the economic power to do it, right? And you take a look at what's going on in Ukraine. They're losing. Like, the United States is ostensibly in a proxy war with Russia, right? And of course, if you wanted to really extend the logic, you could say that they're in somewhat of a proxy war with China in the Ukraine struggle. But really, it's a proxy war with Russia. And they're losing, right? Like, the Americans are losing. And Russia's, like, if you wanted to compare economic power, like, Russia's got nothing on China. Like, China's the big dog, right? China's the big dog. And so the Americans are losing this. They are going to lose. I mean, some commentators have already said they already have lost. Like, the ruble is stronger than it was at the beginning of the war. The sanction regime that the Americans tried to put on Russia has backfired. The real victims of the sanction regime are going to be the Europeans. Russia has swung towards other allies and has tightened up agreements even stronger because of this conflict. Like, and now we're seeing that the Iran, Russia, China to run war drills in Latin America with Venezuela hosting. Like, America's not going to be able to get in here anymore. Like, this whole idea that America is going to be able to go in and, like, coup governments and all this and yabba, 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 like, that's done. Like, that's done. They're running war games off, like, literally closer to America than it is to China. Or Iran. Or Russia. Like, very difficult to reach any other conclusion other than America, unless it wants to start just, like, throwing its military weight around even more and just acting recklessly. Like, this is a fading power. Keep in mind that the fascists in the U.S. tried to organize and were ready to do a coup if General Smedley Butler was willing to be their figurehead. Yeah. Thomas Harmon made a theory that fascists always come back every 80 years. Yes, I've seen this, and currently we're right at that tail end of the 80 years. And at the end of every cycle, there's always a war. Yep. Difficult to see how we avoid it. Like, the mass shootings in the United States are part of it. Right? Like, it's all one thing. Like, we're talking about, like, the Donbass War as if it's a disconnected kind of event, but it isn't. It's all part of the same thing. Right? Yet the United States and NATO are trying to maintain their own hegemonic power, but they're stupid. They don't know how to do it. And they assume their enemies are also stupid, right? When they're not. China needs to boost its navy before it can do anything beyond Taiwan. I mean, again, I've said all along that like China's strategy with Taiwan is to just like wait for the correct moment. They want to take the island without shooting a shot. Like if the only exception to this would be if Taiwan started hosting American troops or putting a military base or something, right? If there was an escalation on Taiwan, then China would have to bite the bullet and do something about it. But as it stands right now, I think the Chinese strategy is basically just like wait for the right moment and then go in and enforce a diplomatic agreement. I think that's the strategy. And if China feels like it can't do that, it probably won't. Like it's going to think in like centuries. Like it's not like in a rush to get this done. I really expect world power to completely shift from USA to China real soon. I wonder how obvious it will be in the West or what the propaganda will turn into. Well, I mean, we're going to have our complete... I keep saying it, and I know it's not really sinking in for me, right? So I suspect that most people don't really believe me when I say this, but like we are going to go like explicitly fascist. Like think about something like The Boys, right? Homelander, you know? Like an obvious fascist, like a complete and total lunatic. But The Boys is still presenting Homelander to us as if he's a villain, as if he's a concern, right? But sooner than we'd like, something like The Boys is going to come out, and Homelander will be the hero, right? Like the explicit fascist propaganda is coming, where might makes right, and the strong, powerful Aryan man is seen as holy and good, right? Like all of that is coming, and it's going to be serious. Many people in the society, more people than you think, are going to go along with it. There's a great play written by a playwright by the name of Ionesco. And he wrote a play called The Rhinoceros. And it's a farce, or an absurdist play, where he as a man is living in a society where everyone around him begins to turn into rhinoceroses. And it's an allegory for his experience with the rise of fascism in his own country. That friends and neighbors and family members became rhinoceroses in front of his very eyes, became fascists in front of his eyes. And we will see the same thing here. You can already see it with the way liberals operate, right? And the gleefulness by which these liberals go after something like the Freedom Convoy, right? We can already see it with the rah-rah bloodthirst, like the blood-curdling cries for world war in Ukraine. We already see it. The seeds are all there. It just hasn't become explicit yet. And it will. That the popular culture will be fascism. Unapologetic fascism. I think that's what really scares people about Trump, and what scared people and what still scares people about Trump is that Trump accommodates fascists. That you can make a fairly credible argument to say that Trump himself is not a fascist, that he's just an opportunist. but he doesn't fight against fascism. He is fine with enabling and empowering fascists. He's fine with accommodating them. Right? And that's by itself is terrifying. That there is a leader of a major world power that is accommodating the fascists and allowing them in and allowing them to exist. And I think speakers like Chris Hedges and Noam Chomsky are right when they say that what comes after someone like Donald Trump is a competent fascist. And someone who will speak in a Christian language, who will absolutely popularize fascism. That the calls for war and the calls for extermination and the calls for and the bloodlettings, the purges, are going to be part of American society. Like, how do you think the concentration camps on the borders, like, how do you think that actually ends? Like, how do you think that actually ends? Do you think it ends with the Americans, like, doing an education program and letting these people integrate into the society? Do you think it ends with, like, a mass release? Do you think it ends with some kind of truth and reconciliation? Do you think it ends with some kind of conversation and some kind of way to ameliorate? How do you think this ends? Seems to me like the only way the concentration camps along the border ends is with a cleansing. Right? A ritualistic religious cleansing. Which I think that's how it will be talked about and how it will be pitched. Like, they don't know what to do with these people. They're certainly not interested in allowing them to integrate into the society. And they're not interested in releasing them. If they were, they'd have already done it. And when push comes to shove, that's what they'll do. I'm really not looking forward to the, like, explicitly pro-fascist propaganda, you know? I'm really not looking forward to it. I would love to live in a society that was, like, going towards peace and love, you know? I'd love to live in a society where we were venerating, like, where we were venerating just playfulness and enjoyment of each other, where we were even attempting to be empathetic with one another. Looks like the end is near for Bojo. Who's Bojo? I don't know who Bojo is. So I guess that's up to me, you know, and up to us to create that kind of society and to create some kind of propaganda that is about peace and love and enjoyment. Like, this is what's so crazed, in my view, of the Christian fascists, is that suffering is the point. That this reality is not for us to exist in peace and enjoyment. This reality is a testing ground. That if you are a Christian fascist, that you are in the Rubicon right now, proving to your creator that you deserve to be in heaven. Right? And if you're an apocalyptic Christian, as many of them are, you see death as a positive. You see the apocalypse as a net good. Right? You've read Revelations. You understand that once this world collapses, Christ will return. And so ushering in the apocalypse is a good thing to do. Yeah, looks like the end is near for Bojo. Yep. Chances are good what'll happen is what happened in Alberta, which is that Kenny resigned, and then the polls for the party went up. So they'll just put in another lunatic conservative, right? Just another loser. Like I don't. That's why I haven't really been like, wow, Boris. Yeah, they're gonna get Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. I don't like it. It's irrelevant to me. Like, Boris Johnson stepping down does not mean the society or the culture is suddenly going to have a big swing to the left, or some kind of big leftist moment, or even labor moment is going to happen, right? It means that they'll put in a different conservative. And everybody will be like, that's a different guy. He's got a different face. And if the guy has any brains in his head, he'll just lie effectively. And everyone will be like, things will improve. And then everything will stay exactly as it is, because that's what conservatism is. And so I'm just like, I don't care. You know? Like, Boris Johnson is just a face. That's all. He's just a face. They'll put another face on. And the populace will be like, that's a different face. Like we always do. So what you're saying is Williamson Blederman, 2024. I don't know who either of those people are. Yeah, that's exactly right, Barnabas, right? Like, until we have like an actual materialist, like until there's a class consciousness, until we understand that until we understand why it's not about individuals, right? It's not about the individual wealthy person or any of this kind of thing. It's like the big issue is that our society has a big savior complex. Like, and that's somewhat built into the whole Christian ethos and the Christian foundation of Western civilization. That we have like a real big savior complex. Like, we all, even secularists, even people who don't buy in to Christianity, still think that there's some savior coming. Still think that it's about waiting for the return of Jesus Christ, or the return of some kind of savior, right? Like Obama. Obama was the savior, right? But it was obviously a fraudulent situation. And we just constantly do it. We're just constantly waiting for saviors to come. But that's not how it's going to go. Because the issue isn't that we just haven't gotten the right individual in. The issue is that there's a class structure at play. And if you are in the ownership class, you're always going to act in a certain way. Always. Right? You're never going to give away your wealth or prestige or any of that kind of stuff. Like, that's not going to happen. And if it does happen, you're going to be punished for it pretty thoroughly. Right? Like, you would be seen as a class traitor. Like, if somebody like Justin Trudeau suddenly did enact a basic income, he'd be expropriated for it. He'd be completely ripped apart, because he would be seen as a class traitor. And until we have an understanding as a society that it is a class issue, and that we have to focus not on these individuals, but on the class they represent, we're never going to get anywhere, right? We're never going to get anywhere. It's why the populace is abandoning parties like the NDP. Like here in Ontario, the NDP was abandoned. There's just no other way to talk about it. And it's because we intrinsically know. Maybe we lack the capacity to articulate it, but we intrinsically know that the NDP are part of the same class as the Conservatives. Like, there's no fundamental difference between the NDP or the Conservatives. If the NDP got into power, we'd continue going to work. Right? Maybe our lives would improve by like 0.2% or something. Like we'd get an extra sick day or something. But like, there's no real fundamental difference between the NDP and the Conservatives. You just keep going to work, keep doing what you're doing, keep striving for your own individual power, right? And even if you disagree with that statement, well, the populace doesn't. Like, that's how the populace views the NDP in this society. If the NDP get in, they raise the standards of living for working people to the point where class and labor organizing can occur. I mean, do they? I mean, that's the mythos. Like, that's the mythos. Like, that's sort of their pitch. Do they? I don't think they do. They're not even willing to call out the villain of the piece. Like, they're not even willing to they're not even willing to call out the villain of the piece. Like, if you're not actually willing to say that capitalism is the crisis, if you're not actually willing to point out that there's a structural issue that must be confronted, what do you like? I don't know what to tell you here, Andrew. Like so you got like NDP in British Columbia. We had NDP in Alberta. We've had NDP before here in Ontario. Like, nobody believes this. Like, nobody believes this. Like, my view of the NDP is that they're completely capitulated to corporate power. That they exist as controlled dissent. Like, maybe they'll improve things by like 2%. Right? Because they filled in the slot of the old Liberal Party. That the Overton window has shifted so dramatically to the right that you have like a Conservative Party that's basically far right, whose ethos is, let's destroy this place. And then you have a Liberal Party, which essentially operates as moderate conservatives, right? Like, they'll improve things for their own constituents by like 0.2% or whatever, right? And then a little bit to the left of them is a center-right party called the NDP, whose ethos seems to be, we're going to improve things by 2% or whatever, which is like classic liberalism, right? But they're not actually confronting the actual structure of the piece, and they're not willing to say aloud that capitalism is the crisis. Like, all political parties will do things to get their voters, to make their voters happy. Right? Like, even conservatives do things to make their voters happy. Like, but that has nothing to do with the class dynamic. That has nothing to do with the structure of the piece. Like, the vast bulk of the populace does not fundamentally see a difference between the NDP or the Conservatives. And the reason why is because the NDP, like, okay, so like let's minimum wage tied to inflation, paid sick leave, banning corporate donation, entrenching indigenous rights. Okay, you still show up to work on time, or you get in trouble. You're still dominated by a ruling class. The oligarchy is still in control. There's still a class of citizenry who are worthless parasites that are siphoning as much wealth as they possibly can out of the society, right? Like, the structure of capitalism is unassailed completely. And in fact, all of the things that you just listed here, well, these are just talking points for the conservatives to bring up so they can dismantle them later, right? Like, none of that actually addresses the systemic issue at play. Like, you're just telling me that the NDP are going to face the chairs on the Titanic this way instead of this way. And that somehow makes them better. Like, I always show up to work whenever I feel like it. My schedule is more of a guideline. I mean, good for you, bud. If the vast majority of the populace acted that way, they would lose their jobs. They would absolutely lose their jobs. And the NDP operate on behalf of the parasite class, right? They're not doing things to anger the wealthy class, the oligarch class. They're not doing anything to anger these investors, right? Like, the investor class understands that, well, societies will swing to the left and swing against conservatives from time to time. And when they do that, we should have control of that. And so when someone like Jagmeet Singh or Andrea Horvath or Notley or Horgan get in and pass, a 2% raise on taxes or tie wages to inflation or all of this, the oligarch class and the investor class understand that that's going to happen. And instead of like getting mad about it and throwing a hissy fit, because it's such a small capitulation for them, it's almost nothing. Well, what do? They just quietly fund other organizations that'll get into power to dismantle those things. Like, the NDP are part of the grift. They're part of the game. And as long as we keep believing that there's some other thing going on, we're always going to end up with a society that goes one step forward and two steps back. That's always the way it's going to be. It's always going to be one step forward, two steps back. And we could have a big conversation about, like, are unions actually trying to protect us any longer? Seems to me like unions have just become part of the structure of capital. That, again, it's a system of controlled dissent. Like, when the water levels rise, like, the unions are not going to fight on behalf of the homeless. They're going to take shelter under the wing of the capitalist class. I think you actually need to do anything to show that that's the case. You're just asserting without any evidence. Like, what are you talking about, Andrew? Evidence? Oh, okay. Like, inflation is 7.2%, right? The society is in a free fall collapse. Homelessness is spiking. And instead of actually confronting the system that's generating these things, we're putting band-aids on the symptoms. Like, we're putting band-aids on the symptoms. Like, that's what we're doing. Is part of the system recuperated by capital? Yeah. It feels like this is self-evident. When the NDP get into power, do they confront the system of capital? Like, do they make the unions more powerful? Do they take shares away from the capitalist class and put them into the hands of the workers? Do they actually take... But the most confrontational group I've ever seen, including the people calling themselves communists, is the NDP. Okay, bud. I just think you can't be convinced. Keep voting NDP. See where it gets you. Like, the NDP, when they get into power, they're going to raise taxes by 2%. Everybody will continue going to work. And the society will continue drowning. Like, the NDP are the guys that are throwing water wings at people who are drowning in pools. Like, you keep talking about the benefits that they pass. Well, I'm here to tell you those benefits are not helping. Like, good for you, Andrew, right? That's the classic capitalist ethos, right? More for me, right? Fuck you, I got mine. So you're just gonna keep not helping who? What are you talking about? There's literally homeless people in all of these provinces. There's you're not listening. It is as simple as this. There are homeless people in Vancouver. There are homeless people in Vancouver. Bye-bye. There are homeless people in Vancouver. There are homeless people living here. There are homeless people here. You don't care about them. Fuck you, you got yours, right? Fuck you, you got yours. That's your ethos, Andrew. It's the classic capitalist ethos. Fuck you, you got yours, right? No, nobody else matters. There's no other concern, right? Fuck you, you got yours. That's all you care about. That's your analysis. I got mine. I get to show up lackadaisically to work. I get to keep my own... I don't have to keep my own schedule. I don't have to operate on the behest of a system that most other people operate on. So fuck you. I got mine. That's what you care about. That's all you care about. Coming into my chat telling me I don't have a material analysis while there's literally homeless people in the city that's run by the NDP. Shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. It's embarrassing what you're doing in here. It's just fucking embarrassing. There are homeless people living on the streets in Vancouver right now. There are entire streets loaded with tents. What have the NDP done about this? Fuck all. Fuck all. Because they don't care. Because they don't have to care. Because voters like you vote NDP and don't care about those people either. Obviously. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Where's your material analysis? What, the homeless people sleeping on the streets of Vancouver isn't enough evidence for you? Obviously not. Fuck you, you got yours. That's as far as it goes for you. Get the fuck out of here. Jesus Christ. That's the ideology of capital, right? Fuck you, I got mine. More for me, I don't give a fuck about anybody else. This overtly selfish worldview that says, well, I'm doing great, so who gives a fuck? No videos. No videos. Like, fucking unbelievable, man. And these issues are getting worse. Much worse. And are going to continue getting worse. Like, homelessness is going to spread. Homelessness is going to get worse. And it's going to get worse for a very obvious, straightforward reason. because NDP cucks keep getting in, and everybody keeps believing, oh, that means things are going to improve, not recognizing that the NDP are part of this grift. They're part of this system. Like, they're going to improve things like 2%, right? Which is what you keep jerking off about. Oh, the NDP, they made things 2% better. The wealthy are fully aware that they're going to strip all of that when the cycle goes back around. They understand how it works because their objective is to control the populace, to keep the populace going to work, to keep the populace doing all the work while they do nothing of value. That there is an investor class, an oligarch class who do no work, who are irrelevant to the system, who are parasitical. Like David Thompson, the Westons, these people are worthless parasites who just hoard wealth for themselves and obviously understand that every so often they have to capitulate a little tiny bit. And the NDP are the party that does that on their behalf. The NDP are not interested in ending this arrangement. They're not interested in bringing down the oligarchy. They're not interested in empowering the working class. They're interested in going to brunch. They're interested in working on behalf of the oligarch class and patting themselves on the back for the 2% increase that they managed to get before the conservatives get in and get rid of it all, which is what they do. Where's my evidence for that? Literally all of Canadian history. Like, is it going to take, like, the full dismantlement of the healthcare system before you put two and two together on this one? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, I'm sure the multimillionaire Singh family has our back and can relate to our struggles. Yeah. Like the NDP, like the federal NDP keep talking like we're going to raise taxes on the wealthy, right? And that's just their brand. I'm sure they will by 2-3%, right? You'll still go to work. You'll still sacrifice the vast majority of your life to a psychopath culture that's actively destroying itself while you pretend like that's okay, right? Because fuck you, I got mine. The core ethos of capital. Fuck, man. I'd rather talk to the Nazis than fucking NDP supporters, man. Straight up. Like, straight up. Like, I'd rather talk to the fucking fascists that float through here than people who are apologists for this NDP bullshit. Because, like, at least these fucking Nazis aren't gullible rubes. At least they're not walking around pretending like... At least the fucking Nazis aren't pretending like they're actually helping or something. Yeah, at least they're straight up. Like, for fuck's sake. Like, if you cannot figure out that the game is 1 step forward, 2 steps back, that NDP get into power, push things forward like 1%, so the populace goes, yay, something's happening, yay, something's happening by 2%, yay, this incremental reformism, so that the same power structure gets the conservatives in after everybody is like, okay, you're going to keep going, right? No, you're not? Oh, okay. Well, I guess we the disgruntled masses will now just go back conservative. And then they strip it back down. Like, if you cannot see this pattern, then you don't care. Like, you don't care. Like, Andrew, this is all I'm getting from you, bud. You don't care. Like, you care about yourself. That's what you care about. Fuck you, I got mine. That's what you care about. And if you can't figure out that this obvious, overt game that is happening in front of your eyes, then I don't know what to tell you, bud. Sure you do, bud. Keep voting NDP. See where it gets you. Like, there is no progress in a capitalist structure. No, again, you just don't care about the homeless, dude. Like, you just don't give a shit about these people. You don't care. Human desperation is not evidence to you. Okay. I'm good. I'm just gonna move on, bud. Like, there's just no point. So we got a real estate slowdown in Toronto, Vancouver, right? Average selling price Greater Toronto Area has fallen by 14% since February, which still puts us like in absurdist territory. Oh, that's a good point, Mark. That's a good point. David Lynch. We got a bunch of sevens. I'm in on a 7 too.
Here we go for today's number. It's July 6th, 2022. 10 balls.
I love it when NDPers pretend like this is actually going to happen. It's just so fucking clueless and charming. Here we go. Here we go.
Pick a number. Today's number is 9.
9. We all missed it. Everybody get fucked. Everybody get fucked. Everybody get fucked. Yeah, but and this is again, Matthias, like the case in point that I'm talking about, right? This is the ratchet that I'm talking about. Oh wow, it dropped 14%, and then it'll go up 30%, and then it'll drop another 15%, and then it'll go up another 30%, 15, 30, 15, 30, 15, 30, 15, 30, 15, 30, right? And everybody jerks off on the drop by 14% and then completely ignores the rise of 30%, right? Like that's the way this goes. And of course there's been a slowdown in sales. Prices are absurd. The only people who are buying up shit are organizations like BlackRock. Like, the average home sale price in Toronto continues to slide. 1.1 million. Down from 1.3 million. If you go back to even January of 2021, right? Do we think it's going to get back down here? Do we think that's going to happen? Oh, this is a good one. Nah, fuck it. Fuck it. If you think January 6th can't happen again, go stand in a gun store right now and listen to the chatter. This shit is deadly serious. Engineered in Exile? I think I've seen you around, bud. It was, what was it even? It was like a 9? Yeah. Too bad. Too bad. Nobody hit the 9. We all got fucked. Everybody got fucked. Oh yes, here's a good one. Christian fascist propaganda is all over TikTok. It's from Vice News. TikTok has a growing online subculture that's propping up surging Christian nationalist and Christo-fascist ideology in the United States and beyond. Patrick Bateman, the lead character in American Psycho, walks towards you as a vapid montage of images depicting medieval-era religious wars between Christians and Muslims flashes in the distance. Madonna's 2005 chart-topping single, Hung Up, is playing. You see the words, "Fight for glory, Western man." This isn't a fever dream. It's a TikTok video with 11,000 views and part of a growing online subculture that's propping up surging Christian nationalist and Christo-fascist ideology in the United States and beyond. Christian nationalists believe that their country's policies and laws should reflect evangelical Christian values, and culture war issues like LGBTQ rights, critical race theory, or immigration are regarded as signs of moral decay that imperil their nation's future. Christo-fascists take that one step further and believe that they're fighting primordial battles between West and East, good and evil, right and left, Christian and infidels. These two labels, however, sometimes overlap. On TikTok, ideologues from both ends of the spectrum are weaving together a shared visual language using 4chan memes, scripture, Orthodox and Catholic iconography, imagery of holy wars, and clips from movies or TV featuring toxic male characters. Many of the videos on their face are innocuous enough, but they exist in close proximity to disturbing, violent, or explicitly white nationalist content. It's no accident that this community is expanding on TikTok, of all places, according to Thomas Lecaque, an associate professor at the history at Grandview University in Iowa, who focuses on apocalyptic religion and political violence. You build your audience with a young demographic and then you spread your ideas that way. This is how you build the next generation of fascists, he said. The biggest TikTok account in this place was Kate Liech R, who claims to be based in Ireland and racked up nearly 30,000 followers and over 2 million views since posting their first video last September. TikTok removed the account after Vice News reached out for comment, but another account posting the same content was activated soon after. TikTok says they're aware that banned users often try to return by creating alternative accounts and will sometimes take steps to ban a person's device entirely. Instagram and Reddit accounts are under the same handle are also still up. They did not respond to Vice News' request for an interview, but one of their TikTok followers told Vice News, "Christians are not to have fellowship with unbelievers. Your propaganda outlet is blatantly anti-Christ, and we seek no part in it." Many of their videos were shared under the hashtag ChristPill hashtag, a play on the hashtag red pill terminology used to describe a person's radicalization into the far-right politics, and yet another reminder of the ideological proximity between these religious extremists and the alt-right. Their videos, like most others in this genre, stop short of making explicit references to violence, but they incorporated coded allusions to it through imagery of past religious wars or pop culture references. The result is a murky collection of problematic content where it's not always easy to tell how far the creator wants their followers to go, which is especially concerning given the uptick in real-world violence committed by Christian nationalists. Lecoq pointed out one TikTok account that used images from the video game Fallout, New Vegas. The character that they use is one who engages in religious discourse and leads mass slaughter for his faith, he said. Some accounts in this genre identify themselves as tradcath, traditional Catholics. Others identify as Orthodox. Some illustrate Bible verses with anime, another reminder of 4chan's influence. Others through an 80s-style vaporwave aesthetic set to deep house music. Gifs of alt-right icon Pepe the Frog even make an appearance at times. Some use incel memes to bemoan what they see as the decline of Christian family values in the West. Some identify themselves as nationalists, while others employ blatantly fascist symbols to signpost their alignment with Christo-fascism. But while aesthetic choices, denomination, and even political ideology can vary across accounts in this world, they're linked by fantasies of violence and conflict. The shared message is clear. White Christian identity is under attack and needs to be fought for, through prayer, the ballot box, or even violence. Back in the real world, acts of political violence are increasingly committed in the name of Christian nationalism in the U.S. A report published earlier this year identified Christian nationalism as the most dominant ideology among the mob who stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Christian nationalists and Christo-fascists have also targeted LGBTQ pride events and pro-choice protesters in the last month. TikTok removed accounts flagged by Vice News after a request for comment. TikTok stands firmly against violence, both online and off, a company spokesperson said. We remove content and accounts that seek to glorify or promote violence, violent groups, or militias, and continuously look for ways to strengthen our policies and enforcement, and collaborate with experts and civil society organizations. Our goal is to foster a welcoming and safe place for creative expression and entertainment. It's also worth noting that this subculture is distinct from the world of Christian TikTok influencers, though curious travelers could find themselves submerged in Christo-fascist or Christian nationalist content if they were searching hashtags like #Orthodox or #Catholic. Kate LaReach R. has played an important role in tightening bonds between other Christian TikTok users, and they describe the genre by regularly sharing videos promoting other accounts in this space. Of the 55 accounts recommended by Kate LaReach R. over the course of the 6-part video series, it's unclear where about half of them were based. The majority of accounts reviewed by Vice News don't have any faces or clear identities attached to them, and they claim to hail from the US, Australia, England, Hungary, Macedonia, and other countries in Europe. Only 2 of those 55 accounts, one from Azerbaijan and another from Germany, posted videos in their native language. Some accounts have aligned themselves with Russia in its invasion of Ukraine. For their part, Kate LaReach R. has told followers that they support Ukraine. One of the accounts promoted by Kate LaReach R. 1400.800 V2. The V2 typically indicates that an earlier version of the account was removed by moderators, posted a video in December that began with a clip from a speech that then President Trump gave in Warsaw, Poland, in 2017. The fundamental question of our time is whether the West has the will to survive, Trump said, before fading into a montage of battle scenes from past holy wars in Europe. A text bubble pops up with the words, "It does." The account owner claims to be Hungarian, though it's unclear if it's by ancestry or birth. They have not responded to viewers who've asked directly in the comment section under their videos where they're based. This online community seems to be growing at a time when Christian nationalist ideology is attaining mainstream acceptance, particularly in the US, where a conservative majority on the Supreme Court has opened the floodgates to a torrent of regressive opinions, including dismantling the national right to abortion. After that decision, one Christian nationalist podcaster, who has nearly 45,000 followers on Telegram, declared that the current moment of the era of Christian nationalism. People are thirsty for it. They are hungry for this, he said. We are the Christian Taliban, and we will not stop until the Handmaid's Tale is a reality. Even worse than that, to be honest, he said. Unsurprisingly, misogynist and reductive portrayals of women are rife within the #Christpilled community on TikTok. Views about abortion, feminism, or traditional family values are often expressed through the trad wife Wojak, a female version of the sad internet character Wojak with blonde hair and a modest floral dress. She's meant to represent women who embrace submission to their spouses and take on ultra-traditional roles in their household. One TikTok video from December, under hashtags like #Christian and #GenZ, shows InfoWars' Alex Jones dancing with a light-up fidget spinner. A quote appears, "If you ban abortion, women will die in backstreet abortions." Good, the video goes on to say. Other videos contain imagery of the Crusades, a series of religious wars between Christians and Muslims between 1096 and 1291, which began to secure control of holy sites, like Jerusalem. Crusader imagery has often been employed by white nationalists to signify or even justify violence against Muslims in Europe around the Syrian refugee crisis. In their bios, some accounts feature the Christian motto Deus Vult, which translates to God wills, and was chanted by the Crusaders. The slogan enjoyed a resurgence after 2012 when it was featured predominantly in the video game Crusader Kings 2, according to the website Know Your Meme. Fast forward 5 years, and white supremacists who march through the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia, at violent Unite the Right rallies were chanting it, while bearing flags containing Crusader symbols. References to the Crusades were scattered throughout the diatribe posted online by the gunmen who opened fire on 2 New Zealand mosques and killed 50 people. These references are used in a way to showcase the idea that they're the kind of Catholics who would happily kill for their faith, Lecoq said. It's a way to signal Islamophobia and holy war in the worst way, while still giving them space for plausible deniability. Vice News identified several TikTok accounts posting under hashtags like hashtag Christian, hashtag Orthodox, and hashtag Catholic, which incorporated a euphemism used to refer to the ethnic cleansing of Muslims. TikTok says their moderators regularly undergo training to help them identify the latest symbols, terms, and offensive stereotypes that could be described as hateful behavior. But even Crusader symbols, like the red cross on a white background, aren't exclusively associated with the far right, posing a challenge to social media content moderators. They have the dual utility of being an open dog whistle and a religious symbol, Lecoq said. The Sigma male is another recurring motif and hashtag in this genre. TikTokers have glommed onto particular movie or TV characters as archetypes of self-reliant masculinity. Confusingly, given the emphasis on Christian values, many of these characters, like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, Walter White from Breaking Bad, and Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, aren't exactly paragons of virtue. These characters are associated with violence, though. One account that's been promoted by Kate Lariche R has since been removed, made a video incorporating the shooting rampage scene from Taxi Driver with the caption, "Me at my local Pride Parade." Eventually, this kind of stuff is going to find root somewhere that won't ban it. And it will grow and become like a festering ooze that will ooze its way into the society. Andrew's having a bit of a wank in the chat. That's nice. I'm glad you're organizing, bud. I'm glad. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Get those homeless people you ignore off the streets. Chris Hedges is being interviewed about Christian fascism again. Yeah. I mean, he's sort of the seminal voice, right? He's the one. Thanks, DM, bud. I appreciate it. I always value you, bud. Oh yeah, having a bit of a thing. Maybe I'll start wearing my cross again. Oh yeah, maybe they'll leave me alone if the fascist suspicion and reporting dissidents to the state power really take off. I know, right? SpongeBob chalice turned to a glass. The hostility from you, John, you drive people away with that. Okay. Like, Bud, you seem to think that what you're doing is working while there's a growing homeless people in the city that you say things are fine in. Like, the NDP are in power in BC. And you just ignore these people. There they are. That's not evidence? Okay, I don't know how to talk to you, bud. I don't know how to talk to you. Yeah, it's not like I can wave my hands and put people in houses I don't have any power over. Yeah, I know, but the NDP aren't interested in it either. So why are you defending them? Your analysis is incomplete. I mean, feel free to show me how, bud. All you've said this whole time is your analysis is incomplete. Okay. How? I've given you completely the argument from start to finish. That it's a ratcheting effect. NDP go forward 1, Conservatives go back 2. And that's a plan. That's a strategy. Like, I'm tired of it. Like, the NDP are not working to overthrow the system of capital. And it really is that simple. And as it gets worse and worse and worse, more and more people are going to understand it. And Andrew, dude, I'm tired of this conversation, bud. It's going in circles. Like, I'm tired of it. You're taking over my chat. I'm moving on. Like, I wish we had been talking about this instead. Right? Like, it's as a pointless... Vladimir Oilyanov, good to see you, bud. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking loser. Stop whinging. What a fucking loser you are. Enjoy your stupid little liberal life. Your pretend organization. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking loser. You're just faux liberalism. You're faux compassion. You're faux giving a shit. Right? Like this fake nonsense. Andrew, you care about yourself exclusively. Fuck you, I got mine. That's your entire ethos. Get the fuck out of here. We don't need you here. With your fake bullshit. Get the fuck out of here. Moving on. What's my take on Ukraine? Very quickly. Russia has openly declared success in Luhansk. Where is it? Right? They very openly declared success in Luhansk. So this region is owned by Russia. The stated war goals of Russia is to claim the Donbass region and to turn it into an independent state. So far, so good. There doesn't look to be any credible pushback. There doesn't look to be any credible anything going on. Like, looks like Russia's going to win this thing. And unless the United States and NATO start pouring troops in, unless they actually start like pushing in a serious way, I don't see how it could go any other way. That the only real question for me at this point is will the West acknowledge it? That's the only real question, right? Because what is going to happen is that Russia is going to take this territory over and is just going to begin building administrative strength and will begin just acting as though it is the independent, well, and independent, but that it's like it'll be like a Belarusian style state, right? Technically independent, but really a vassal state of Russia, right? And they're just going to move forward with that. And there is some conversation about, okay, are they going to take this territory too? Like they took Crimea, they've been taking territory, Odessa, for example, Mariupol, right? Will they actually build along here? But it just doesn't look like there's any Like, and I think this is true even if you're pro-Ukrainian, right? Even if you are like rah-rah Ukraine. Like, yeah, okay, rah-rah Ukraine, but you guys lost the war. Like, the war is lost. It's just a matter of declaring it at this point. And Russia is going to create administrative power in Ukraine. It's going to hold trials, right? Yeah, we have 2 Ukraine, like we had 2 Germany for over 40 years. We have 2 Koreas for 47 years, 74 years. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid analysis that like, and the big concern for me moving forward is that this section of the society is where most of the ethnic Russians were, that the rest of Ukraine is fairly far right in how it talks and how it thinks and how it votes. Kiev has actively banned leftist parties, including the Communist Party. It's banned like socialist groups. It's banned like leftist organizations from its politics, but it's left the Nazi parties intact. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to perceive anything other than a extreme far right radical government materializing from the apparati that are permitted to exist within Kiev. Like, they banned the communist parties, they banned the socialist parties, they've banned liberal parties even. Like, they banned 11 political parties, including the leaders of the opposition, right? Including the opposition parties. And so, what's left? Right? Like, what's left? So, moving forward, it's going to be very difficult for me to believe that the governments that come out of the political system in Kiev are anything other than extreme far-right radicals who are constantly going to be engaging in this war and this struggle, right? It's going to be an endless war for them, which is kind of, which is what the United States always wanted. Let's not get into the Trotskyist stuff. Yeah, Western Ukraine is Banderite to the bone. Even the grass and trees are Nazi there. I mean, it's tough to see if it wasn't the case before. It's tough to see how it won't become the case. Like, the hand waving argument from the West was always like, oh sure, there's a couple of Nazis in Parliament, but it's not as bad as you think. And it's like, yeah, but it's gonna get way worse. Like, it's gonna get way worse. Yeah. Remember the massacre in 2014 when communists fleeing a fire were beaten to death? Well, let's not forget about the coup. Just straight up the coup, So that's more or less my perspective on that, Vladimir, unless you want to get a little bit more specific. But, like, I don't... the moment I'm most interested in paying attention to is going to be the trials. That's what I'm going to be most interested in. I think I'm going to spend the most amount of my time investigating the trials that come. Because those trials are going to be very illuminating, I think. There's going to be a lot of Nazis put on trial. There's going to be a lot of... I think there's going to be a lot of exposed. I think there's going to be a lot exposed. And of course, Western media is not going to talk about it at all, right? Is not going to be interested at all in talking about the Nazis that are put on trial. I'll be very curious to see how the Russians go about it. Like, are they going to hold their own trials? Which the West will obviously describe as, like, kangaroo courts, right? That's how it will be described from the West. Or will the Russians pursue a more internationalist solution, right? Will they take these Nazis to, like, The Hague, for example, right? Thank you, comrade. I'm a PC USA member. Good for you, bud. Good for you. Keep on keeping on. Keep on trucking, right? That's the best that we can do. We're dealing with lots of Nazism and faux liberals, and like, well, I shouldn't say faux liberals, but like lots of Nazis and lots of liberals, lots of faux leftists these days. I bet the West is going to report something along the line of Russia as their own Nazis. Yeah. No, that's what they've always been. Like they've always been saying that the Russians are just as bad. Like, oh, there's way more white supremacy and Nazism in Russia, right? Like, just that's classic Goebbels shit, right? Accuse others for for that which you are guilty. So yeah, Putler, right? Call Putin Hitler, and you guys know what my perspective of it is, which is that I feel like Putin was drawn into the conflict, that he didn't have there wasn't an alternative. Like in 2014 there was a coup in Kiev fomented by NATO. The coup government that was installed afterwards went to the Donbass region and started shelling the shit out of it. This includes ethnic Russians. While this goes on, people of Russia begin saying to Putin, do something about this. Putin and while that's happening, there's a rising Stalinist communist party within Russia. And so Putin, I think, is drawn into it. I just think that they don't have he didn't have an alternative. If he did nothing, I think he would have been ousted by his own people, and they would have done something about it. And so I think that even if you view Putin as I view Putin, which is as an opportunist primarily, and something of a Russian nationalist, I think. Like, I don't think he has an ideology beyond be the ruler of Moscow and, try to do good by the Russians, right? I think he does want to be seen as a good Russian. But, like, what's the alternative for him? Right? He's got ethnic Russians being shelled by Ukrainians here. Yeah. Putin was forced into the war by all sides, I think. Not only by the West, but by his own people. And to me, that's the big narrative. Like, and it's something that I don't see a lot of leftists actually confront seriously. That, like, what was Putin supposed to do? Like, near as I can tell, his options were resign and let somebody else do it, or do it. We'll see what the long-term result is, but again, as I've already said, it's likely that this becomes like a Belarusian style, and maybe it's this, like maybe it's like the entire south of Ukraine, like whether it's this or whether it's this, right? Only time will tell. I'd be very surprised to see Putin push. Some people have suggested that Putin is going to push into Lviv, right? I don't see it. Like I don't see a big push coming. But I've been wrong. I was wrong about the invasion in the first place because I never believed that the United States would have permitted it to happen. It was so easy to stop. Like that's the thing. John, do you have any opinion on how they will demilitarize Ukraine? They're not going to do that. That's not going to be successful. The demilitarization of Ukraine. The only way they could achieve that is if they took Kiev. And the person who is going to decide whether or not Kiev gets taken or not is Zelensky. Like, if Zelensky comes to the table and they create a diplomatic solution, which is now possible, because the reason why they couldn't create a diplomatic solution previously is because the Ukrainian military was not responding to the power structure. Like, it pays to remember that Zelensky ordered, when he first came into power, he was elected on a platform of ending the Donbass war. And he went to the front line and told the men there on the front to withdraw. And they told him to fuck off. So he never had control of the military. The military was never responding to him. Well, now the military is surrounded by Russians. Now the military, like thousands of Ukrainians have been captured. Uh, there's no sign that there's going to be a big mounting offense. Yet they mocked him like some kid, right? So once the military is out of the picture, right? Like once the Russians have taken care of the military, which for all intents and purposes looks like that's what's happening. Well, will Zelensky move forward with his promise, which is to end the Donbass war? The problem for Zelensky is that huge majorities of Ukrainians are against the idea of ceding territory. That something like 85%. That if 85% of the populace doesn't see, if 85% of the populace is against the idea of ceding territory, well, Zelensky's not necessarily going to want to go along that route because he wants to be reelected, right? And it really is that simple. He wants to be reelected. Don't be too terribly surprised to see Zelensky go through an election, get reelected, and then right after the election, do some kind of negotiation. Because the last thing he wants is for Russians to push into Kiev, which they can, right? He definitely doesn't want that. And so there's a lot of balls up in the air, and there's a lot of that going on. So will we see a negotiation? Will we see something? Like, that's a good question, actually. When is the next Ukrainian election? When is the next presidential Ukrainian election? 2024. We'll see if he can make it, right? We'll see if he can make it. I don't think so. Like, as the Russians begin to secure this territory and gain more and more military strength, and as the Ukrainian military wanes, right? Like, Eric asked earlier, do you have any opinion on how they will demilitarize Ukraine? I mean, capturing their entire military force is a good way to demilitarize Ukraine, right? Like, destroying their weapons capacity, destroying any of that kind of stuff. Like, this is what's so funny about this whole conflict, is that they're constantly, like, the West is like, we are going to send weapons in. Here's some howitzers. Well, the Russians blow them up. That's what happens. Like, I think it was Lutsk. There was like a warehouse in Lutsk where they were keeping some of these things that like the Canadians and the Americans had sent, and they just flew over it and blew it up. Right? You can't move these kinds of weapons around secretively. They're big. It's obvious what they are. Hey, a bunch of trucks drove in from Poland. What do you think's in them? Like, it's very, very tough to get that kind of shit to the front, and which isn't to say it doesn't happen, but like, the Russians have air superiority. They've got communications superiority. Like, that to me is, I think, the unspoken strength of what's going on. Like, the Ukrainians can't really talk to each other, right? Like, they don't have the ability to actually talk. They don't have, like, all of their radio towers were blown up right away, right? So they can't really talk to one another. So the only way to get messages to one another is to literally send a guy, right? Meanwhile, you've got the Russians who have fully intact radio communications. They can talk to one another very freely. It'd be very, very easy to dominate a region just with that. Just with that. One group has to actually send people to communicate meaningfully, and the other group can just like radio. It's extraordinarily dominant. The Vietnamese moved thousands of tons of artillery gear to Dien Bien Phu versus the French, one piece at a time. Yeah, you do got to do what you got to do. You're not wrong about that, Barnabas. Like, I shouldn't shit on it too much, but we also have evidence to show that, they try to move trucks in and the Russians blow them up. Hopefully Zelensky will be made hero of Ukraine posthumously. I think the Russians need Zelensky. The Russians need Zelensky because Zelensky has been made such a figurehead and such a, the hero of Ukraine, exactly as you say, right? That they need Zelensky, because any document Zelensky signs will have to be seen as credible, right? That if Zelensky signs something that says the Donbass region is ceded, or we acknowledge the independence, Crimea is a part of Russia, then the West and the United States and all the neocons and the war hawks and all these guys have to accept it. They have to accept it. They can't just ignore it, right? And a lot of your leftist types, myself included, will say, look, this is what Zelensky agreed to, right? It's got his signature on it. This is your guy. This is your guy. You're the one that kept telling me he was a hero. You're the one that kept telling me he was this big deal. So they don't want, if Zelensky died, I think that would actually be a big problem for Russia. I think that they would be faced up to a real issue. And so they want Zelensky exactly where he is. I'm not arguing. I'm showing how a people seen as lesser did it better. Oh, no, I understand, Barnabas. Yeah. And there's definitely a bit of that going on for sure. You're right to point it out, that there is a way to get this kind of material to the front line. Part of the issue, of course, that's going on is for this entire conflict, this is essentially where the bulk of the military has been, right? That the Ukrainian military, the bulk of it has been in this region here, right? Shelling Donetsk, shelling Luhansk, right, from this position. And so Russia this entire time has been pushing in from Luhansk and Donetsk, but has also been attempting to surround it, right? They've been attempting to surround this position, and they haven't been successful, but we are seeing reports now that they have been successful. Whether or not that's completely true, who knows? But, the Russians want us to think so. And of course, the Ukrainians and the Westerners want us to not think so. So it's tough to figure out if that has happened or not. But that is the Russian goal, to create a cauldron, as they call it, right? They want to create a cauldron. So basically, the Ukrainian military, nothing can get in and nothing can get out, is really the goal. And we are seeing, the surrender at Mariupol. There was a big surrender in There was a big surrender, a big taking of... there it is. This moment was a big moment, right? Where they took the city of... I can never pronounce this correctly. Lysychansk. They took this city, which allows Putin to declare... Luhansk as secured for Russia, which is true. And so now the battle moves into the Donetsk region. And if they can get the cauldron and if they can do that kind of stuff, it's very, very difficult for Ukrainians. Anyway, I've been talking enough about Ukraine. I've been talking enough about this. And I suspect that at the end of the day, what you'll see is a very similar thing to what's happened here, right? What happened in Georgia has echoed in Ukraine in many ways. That again, I think that what happened in Georgia was that Putin was drawn into a military conflict. He had to respond to a coup in a country, a former Soviet country on his border. And the Russians took pieces of land, but the West refuses to acknowledge that. And so they've put these little dotted lines here, right? To act as though this is not actually Russian territory when it's Russian territory. Good to see you, Vladimir. Let people know I exist, okay, bud? Let people know I exist. Good to see you, bud. That shit with Andrew pissed me off, man. I gotta be honest about it, man. I could have maybe handled that better, you know? Because he did say something, right? Like, that I am taking an antagonistic posture. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. No, but we can't accept these like fake leftist bullshit. Like we're gonna piecemeal reform this. Like that's really what it is, you know. Like we can't accept piecemeal reformism at this point. It doesn't work. It's not working. The piecemeal reform is not responding rationally to climate change. It's not responding rationally to homelessness. It's not responding rationally to the housing market. It's not responding rationally to the rising cost of living. Right? This idea that we're just gonna throw our chips in with a piecemeal reformist because, oh, what else are you gonna do? Well, what else are you gonna do? We're gonna surround the halls of power. That's what we're gonna do. And I'm just like not accepting disrespect from people who continue to throw chips into a failed system. That's obviously not working. Because it happens to be working for them. Like, nah. Lizzie Chansk? What's Lizzie Chansk, Nova Scotia? No, I honestly think, Barnabas, that, like, it's difficult for people to be confronted with evidence. Like, homelessness in the province, in the city of Vancouver is evidence. Like, that's pretty massive evidence. Yep, I think that's right, Methane. I think that's right. And like, I say it over and over again, right? Nothing is going to be more convincing than the system of capital itself. Right? And these people coming in trying to pretend as though we're the crazy ones while they continue to defend a system that's overtly failing. Like, it's just intolerable to me. It's just fucking intolerable. I just can't take it anymore. Like, I refuse to pretend. What is Moore versus Harper? Here's a good one. Experts say the next big Supreme Court case could provide the path for election subversion. The Supreme Court on Thursday agreed to hear the case of Moore versus Harper, a North Carolina case that concerns gerrymandering, voting districts, and a little-known theory called the Independent State Legislature Doctrine this coming October. Should the court rule in North Carolina's favor, the ruling would reduce voter oversight on state legislatures and likely impact the outcome of various statewide political races, as well as the 2024 presidential election. The facts of Moore v. Harper. Moore v. Harper centers around congressional maps drawn by Republican lawmakers in North Carolina following the 2020 census. The maps were challenged in court by Democratic voters and nonprofits who argued the districts were unfairly gerrymandered in favor of Republicans, which violated the state constitution. Earlier this year, the North Carolina Supreme Court blocked the state from using the maps in primary elections and required the districts be redrawn. Today, we answer this question. Does our state constitution recognize that the people of this state have the power to choose those who govern us by giving each of us an equally powerful voice through our vote? Or does our Constitution give to members of the General Assembly, as they argue here, unlimited power to draw electoral maps that keep themselves and our members of Congress in office as long as they want, regardless of the will of the people, by making some votes more powerful than others? Justice Robin Hudson wrote in the state Supreme Court's majority opinion, which blocked the use of the gerrymandered maps. We hold that our Constitution's Declaration of Rights guarantees the equal power of each person's voice in our government through voting in elections that matter. Republican state lawmakers in February requested in an emergency appeal that the United States Supreme Court halt the state's order to redraw the maps, though the request was denied. Justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch dissented to the denial. In their dissent, the justices wrote that the independent state legislator doctrine was an important question for the court to resolve. The new maps, drawn by North Carolina Supreme Court appointed experts, were used in the state's May 17th primary election. In another appeal to overturn the state Supreme Court's decision, Timothy K. Moore, the Speaker of the North Carolina House of Representatives, filed for a writ of certiorari, a request that the United States Supreme Court review the case. The review was granted on June 30th, with the case to be heard in the Supreme Court session this October. Independent state legislature doctrine. At the heart of the case, according to SCOTUS blog, is the legal theory called independent state legislature doctrine, which suggests that under the Constitution's election clause, only the legislature has the power to regulate federal elections, without interference from state courts. The theory would disable state courts from protecting voting rights in federal elections by eliminating state constitutional protections in those elections. Legal experts Leah Littman, Kate Shaw, and Carolyn Shapiro wrote of the case in an opinion piece for the Washington Post, and it would do so at a time when voting rights are under attack, including at the Supreme Court itself. Under the most strict readings of the doctrine, provisions in state constitutions which restrain lawmakers from influencing elections would be rolled back. The governor, who could usually veto new election laws, would lose the ability to do so, and state courts would be unable to reverse anti-democratic laws or challenge gerrymandered districts. This interpretation of the Constitution could make it easier for state legislatures to suppress the vote, draw unfair election districts, enable partisan interference in ballot counting. The Brennan Center for Justice tweeted about the case. Conservative Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, and Samuel Alito have all endorsed versions of the legal theory in previous court opinions. Their support signals that they will vote in this case to overturn previous legal precedent which considered many such cases highly partisan and thus unjusticiable, and prevented the country's highest court from weighing in on partisan state issues, including gerrymandered election maps. The court's forthcoming decision could roll back efforts to combat gerrymandering in battleground states nationwide and give state legislatures unlimited control over how federal elections are conducted. This case has the potential to fundamentally rework the relationship between state legislatures and state courts in protecting vote rights in federal elections, election law expert Richard Hansen wrote on his election law blog. It could also provide the path for election subversion. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called the Supreme Court's decision to hear this case a judicial coup in progress. If the president and Congress do not restrain the court now, the court is signaling that they will come for the presidential election next, the New York Democrat tweeted. All our leaders, regardless of party, must recognize this constitutional crisis for what it is. We need a hall or clubhouse to meet up if the shit hits the fan, comrades. I mean, yeah. It would be nice to have a plan B. Imagine arguing that you got to be friendly to the pushers of neoliberalism. Yeah, Andrew played his part exactly how he knew he should. He knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah, that's right. No, that's exactly right. Right? One of the courtiers, you know, defend the system because he thinks it's working for him. I think the worst people are the people who actually have bought into the idea that, oh, I sell myself for money and that's acceptable. I think that's the worst, right? That they've just like gone all the way into the Stockholm syndrome, right? That they have come to love the system that exploits them. It's very difficult to have a discussion with someone like that. Like, at base, if you accept the idea that, oh, I'm supposed to sell the vast majority of my time to a class of citizen who does no work and is a parasite, and that's fine. If you just accept your wage slavery at base, then it's very difficult to have a serious conversation, right? Like, do you not value yourself as a person? Do you not actually value the idea that, like, you have your own self? And if you just give it away, just sell it away, and you've accepted that, you know, then you're not going to actually be mobilized until that arrangement no longer functions, which is what will happen. Electors voting the people, not the people voting electors. Yeah. GOP owns the court. No office time meant judges were not supposed to be political. Yeah, sanctuary to fall back on. Prepper's got the right idea, I think. Sounds like a great idea to build on. I mean, I say it over and over again on this channel, right? Like, we're just starting, and our flaw is that we're too spread out. That's really what it is. So, again, I encourage each and every one of you, as I am attempting to move forward in a protest, when I move forward in a protest, right? That's me attempting to push forward on the thesis of what this is, which is that we have to surround the halls of power, that incremental reformism is doomed to fail. That's how it works for thousands of years, yeah. The main thing I notice is, yeah, strongly believe that reformation will work. Well, if you accept that what's happening is already working for you, then, you know, a minor reformation to it is fine. John, have you looked into why you get demonetized when you play videos? Because I know there's a lot of content creators who play videos, but they don't get demonetized. Yeah, dude. I just am, right now, I'm so frustrated and annoyed that I'm just like, no videos, like full stop. Not even gonna fuck around with it. Not interested. Like, maybe if I get bigger and I can actually, like, afford to take the time. Because, like, I work my own capitalist job to get these bills paid. I work at this to try to build it, to try to build what I'm building. And I literally, like... And then there's also, like, hey, when do I actually take a break and get a breather for myself? And when do I actually get to, like, just exist, right? So, like, it's too much. It's too much. So, like, if this channel picks up and, like, I start getting a whole bunch of money and I can actually start supporting myself with it, and I get time back, then maybe I can start really sifting around and figuring a lot more stuff out. But I'm just, like, frazzled. I feel frazzled. You know? I feel frazzled. I feel like I look... Like, I feel how my glasses look. Barnabas, I'll be straight with you, bud. It's your passion. You're a very passionate person. And you're moving forward, right? You want to move forward. You want to push forward. So you're a very passionate, firebrand kind of type of person. And people aren't ready for it yet. Like, really. Like, people aren't ready for it yet. Like, they'll get ready for it. It will happen, but they're not ready for it yet. People are softer, right? Yeah. We just gotta forgive people, you know? We just gotta, like... That's why I kind of keep circling back around on that conversation I just had with Andrew, you know? Like, I can't accept the disrespect, and I'm not going to accept being disrespected. But it is somewhat understandable, isn't it? Like, when you're sort of faced with the horror of what it all is and how it's all going to be, like, if you can find a little niche in your life, and if you can just accept that, oh, I'm working this job, and, you know, it's got some benefits to it, and things are going, like, reasonably well, so I guess this is okay, right? If you can accept that, right, and kind of find your own place in it and all of that, right? Then something like incremental reformism makes sense. Right? You can believe that the, like, small little incremental changes that occur are have value. Right? And it doesn't matter if there's spiking homelessness. It doesn't matter if like this is the funniest part. I wish I had brought this up with Andrew. Like, Didn't Vancouver just flood? Wasn't there just like a massive flooding that just happened here because of climate change? Wasn't there just like a huge climate change based event that just flooded this and killed like 600,000 animals? Didn't that just happen? Right? Incremental reformism, though, that'll get that done. Right? Incremental reformism, that'll get that done. Meanwhile, like, this essentially is going to give the Supreme Court the authority to choose who the president is. Right? Like, that's what this is. That's why we're talking about it turning into a theocracy. Right? That's what it is. Like, we're watching America turn into a Christian theocracy. And more we're going to see stories along that line. I don't care about this. Oh yeah, and we have people like Mitch McConnell, right? This is a story that shows you that these guys are either just like detached from reality, or evil. Right? Mitch McConnell says the labor shortage will be solved when people run out of stimulus money, because Americans are flush for the moment. Americans are flush for the moment? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how much was the stimulus money that that Americans got? Here, let's get specific. Like, how much stimulus did Americans get in 2021? So people got, like, yeah, $1,400. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like $1,400, that's 1 month of rent. Like, yeah, it was a one-time thing too, yeah. So, like, this is a type of, like, delusional detachment. It has to be, right? Or it's just evil, right? He's just like a psycho. That's always possible too, right? For over a year, lawmakers and businesses have been bemoaning how they can't find workers. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell offered his own theory as to why an event in Paducah, Kentucky on Tuesday You've got a whole lot of people sitting on the sidelines because, frankly, they're flush for the moment, the Kentucky Republicans said. What we've got to hope is once they run out of money, they'll start concluding it's better to work than not to work. Americans built up a huge amount of savings during the pandemic thanks to several federal rescue packages. Moody's Analytics estimates that households built up an extra cash cushion totaling $2.6 trillion from the beginning of the pandemic through the end of 2021. McConnell opposed President Joe Biden's stimulus law, which passed with only Democratic votes in March 2021, after two previous rescue packages approved by the Trump administration. Republicans have long blamed that $1,400 direct payment to Americans for worsening inflation and helping keep people out of the workforce. Like, what are you talking about? Economists have identified a multitude of reasons for the labor shortage. People moved away from locations with open positions. Parents haven't been able to return to work as they deal with ongoing pandemic uncertainty. And the open roles might not be the right fit in terms of skill or pay for people looking to switch jobs. These reasons suggest possible solutions other than McConnell's plan to wait out savings. Businesses could offer higher wages and more flexible workplaces and even tweak job descriptions and requirements to attract a larger pool of potential employees. In the meantime, the labor market has seen a robust recovery, with jobs set to fully recover by this summer. The employment population ratio for Americans aged 25 to 54, considered prime age for employment, has crept above July 2019 levels, according to data from the St. Louis Federal Reserve. Unemployment sits at a historic low of 3.6%. While, for the past year, Americans have been quitting at near record rates, hiring and job openings remain strong. That indicates that many people are quitting for higher paying jobs, especially in low-wage industries, which have also anecdotally struggled the most to hire. Kentucky, McConnell's home state, was briefly the epicenter of the Great Resignation. The sheer number of workers quitting and leaving the workforce was powered by structural conditions that existed long before the pandemic, and only exacerbated by COVID-19. That includes lack of affordable childcare, a low minimum wage, and worries over safety during a still raging pandemic. Moody's said in June that Americans had begun to draw down their savings with price rising at their fastest pace in 4 decades. Like, these guys are losers, right? These guys are massive losers. Yeah, what happened to the landlord rent freeze? There was the mass eviction, right? Hey Rob, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Thanks so much. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Tell people I exist. Tell people I exist. Let the world know. We have to surround the halls of power. That's really what it's come down to. Like, the system is not responding rationally, right? Its apologists like Andrew are its apologists are constantly telling us, oh no, it's fine, right? The incremental reformism is working, right? And then in 5 years, a conservative will get in and destroy all of it. Like, that's what we saw here in Ontario. Like, the devastation that the conservatives are willing to bring forward is incredible. Like, here in Ontario, Doug Ford destroyed 700 climate change programs. Like, so much for your incremental reformism, right? Like, that's the structure of the system, and the wealthy know that that's how it works, right? And how do they know? Because they're funding all the sides. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that we're still funneling energy into this electoral system that does not work, that is a failure. I'll send that to you after the show, okay, Barnabas? Like, what is it going to take, do you think? Like, this is one of the things about protest movements and about this sort of stuff, is that nobody really knows when it happens. Like, nobody, Occupy Wall Street was a great example of this. Like, nobody saw that shit coming. Nobody expected that to really become the mass, like, world movement that it became, right? There was no, nobody called it, right? And as it was building and as it was happening, nobody was, like, really aware of it until it was right in front of us. And then once it broke into mainstream consciousness, and I remember the moment that it really broke into the mainstream consciousness was when cops pepper sprayed a young lady who literally was just like standing on a street corner, right? Just like, and that really broke through because of social media. That it wasn't the corporate press that really hit that, but it was the corporate press. Or sorry, it was the social media that spread it around. Oh, you're off the Discord, Rob? Why is that? Why is that? Why is employment so awful that you have to pay people to work? Good question, Grinning. Like, don't people want to improve their surroundings? Like, don't people want things to be better around them? Don't people want to build, like, cool things and create a cool environment? But capitalism doesn't allow that to happen. Because instead of catering a world to the people who actually live in it, you've got to create a world that caters to the imagination of a small group of psychopaths who don't even live in the environment that you're in. Like, it's brutal. Yeah, I want to work. I want to build something meaningful. Good. Yeah, problem is everyone is only doing it inefficiently for profit only, not anything useful. Well, and also, like, the like everything, like, that you can't just sustain it, right? You can't just have a society like, we've built all the buildings, we've got all the stuff, like, we can't just sustain it. No, it's always just like change it and make it something different on behalf of a class of people who don't even live in the neighborhood. Rob, you say less exciting, heavy id politics, kind of an ODSP support group, less of a working class group. Well, I mean, it is just getting started, Rob. Like, we haven't been around for that long, right? Like, we're building a movement. We're building a movement. And is it where it needs to be? Yeah, no. But it's got to be built. And it's slow and steady wins this race, right? Slow and steady wins this race. Man, what a tiring one this was. This was a tiring one. Like, there is kind of a quality of just like screaming into the wind, isn't there? That the society wants to be fascist. Like, it seems as though that's the hard truth. seems as though that's the hard truth, is that the society wants to be fascist. And it's constantly trying to find a way to do fascism nicely. And it's refusing to acknowledge that there is no such thing as a nice fascism. And we just steadily, gently alter the language, gently change things, gently try to make it more acceptable to be an open fascist. And we're starting to see very repugnant figures come out of the society who are like proto-fascist in their value system and in how they talk about things. Like someone like Ben Shapiro. Like Ben Shapiro's a fascist. Like, for God's sakes, like, this guy openly says that the solution to civil disrest is just flood the area with cops. Like, just explicitly fascist in the way that he operates with the world. And he's, like, one of the most popular people. And my hope for what we're doing here is that as we plunge into this state of fascism, as we plunge downward and enter this extremely dark period, that the incremental reformists will be blown away, right? No one will take that seriously any longer. Like, a drowning person doesn't care about incremental reformism. A person whose house is burning down doesn't care about incremental reformism. Like, the incremental reformists don't want to admit that we're in an emergency, that it's a crisis, like a red alert, all things are on fire crisis. Like, an incremental reformer is someone who is on the other side of town, pretending as though the way to deal with a crisis is to just send thoughts and prayers. Like, if you've got a house fire, you got to spray it with water. You got to do a crisis management. If you've got a person drowning, you got to get them. You got to pull them out of the water. Crisis management. And we're just refusing to acknowledge that we're in a serious crisis. And we're just walking around blithely believing that this incrementalist nonsense is going to actually do anything, and it's not. Like, obviously not. Like, for God's sakes, like, you've got an NDP government and you've got climate change flooding. You've got spiking homelessness. Like, in BC. Like, how's that incremental reformism treating you? And it's not going to be until we get like a serious fascist government in that these people finally go, oh shit, we've got to do something. But that's not going to happen until it happens. And like, I understand, like, Rob, you're like feeling impatient. Like, I understand it. I understand, like, there's this desire, like a hope that more would happen, more should happen. Yeah, I agree. I wish more would happen. I wish more would happen. I'm right there with you. But like, we have to admit that the deck is stacked against us. Right? Like, it's not like these corporate power, like, it's not like YouTube is that interested in spreading my shit around. It's not like they're that interested in me building a larger base. Right? It's not like they're just letting leftists take the center stage. Right? Like, if anything, it's the opposite, that these people are being pushed out of the conversation. And every so often you do see a leftist spring up and actually, like when Crystal Ball went on Bill Maher and just embarrassed him. Well, you know who you're not going to see on Bill Maher again? Crystal Ball. That's over, right? Like it is going to take this society plunging itself into full blown, like with the outfits, with the costumes, with the propaganda, with the structural change, all of it. It's going to take the crisis becoming full blown. That, like, right now, we are a society that has cancer. And the incremental reformists are the guys that think, we can use holistic medicine. I just need to meditate. That'll take care of it. Like, when no, we need to bombard the shit out of it with radiation. And these people aren't going to let it happen until the cancer is like a tumor on the side of their face. Until it's just blown right up. And when they look in the mirror, there it is. They're still walking around pretending like they can just, like, take a little dollop of, like, lemon juice and, like, pray about it. Well, and let's be honest, Rob, like, white people are going to have a better go of it. Right? Like, that's where your liberals are going to live. Right? You know, your liberal and NDP voters. Like, you're just going to be protected by the white power structure, bend the knee to the fascists. That's how it works. Right? The liberals usher in fascism with their worthless piecemeal reformism that's ineffective, that doesn't actually confront the crisis that's in front of them. And yeah. We'll see how it goes. And I mean, I think there's a reason why people who are on ODSP and who are people of color are attracted to what I say and what I do. It's because they're fucking scared. And they have every reason to be. The medically assisted dying program is a terror. Like, the solution that is coming out of Canadian society for how to deal with people with disabilities is, here's the medically assisted dying system. And that's real. And fascists have a long history of wanting to do away with disabled people, and have a long history of wanting to fight against people of color. And so I think there's a reason why those sorts of people are attracted to that discord. Because they're terrified. Because their society is actively terrorizing them. And we, as white men, have the privilege of not experiencing that terror. Not even existentially. That the best we get is to step into the imagination space. And imagine it. But we don't live it. It's not part of our everyday. It's not simmering beneath the surface. And we will, by and large, be protected from it. That someone like me will face the fascists as a communist, as communists and fascists often do. Remember, the first concentration camp was a communist concentration camp. And so it's about patience, solidarity, accepting that the working class still thinks the system is working. And soon it will be obvious that that is not the case. That the disabled and people of color in our society are the canaries in the coal mine. And that they are running for cover to try to find anyone and any place where they can express themselves and express their views openly and freely and safely without being dismissed or belittled. That the workers will come. That the workers will come. But they won't come until the fascists seize power. They won't come until the cancer gets so obvious and is so fully blown that to deny it would be nothing short of a total delusion. I wish it were otherwise. I truly do. Good to see you, Adam. You know, Adam, I want to say something to you right now, bud. I just had a really kind of nasty conversation with somebody who got into a disagreement with me. And I know you and I have gotten into some disagreements with one another. And I just want to say right now that I really think how respectful you always are whenever you disagree with me and whenever we get into a disagreement. I really value that about you, bud. That you never cross the lines. You're always focused on what's the truth and what the truth is. And I really value that about you, bud. I thought Bill M. should have been a bigger target for the leftists to go after for their audience than as opposed to someone like Vosh. You disagreed. Now you care that K-Ball won't be back on. See, you're doing it right here. I thought Bill M. should have been a bigger target for leftists to go after for their audience than as opposed to someone like Vosh. But you disagreed. I don't remember this conversation, so I don't. Sorry, not sure it was pointed out, but the ONDP were to the far right of Mike Harris in the past election in regards to ODSP. Only changed tunes when the Greens platform got more eyes on him. Yep, exactly, Adam. Right? Like, the NDP, like, why does the NDP need to be forced to the left? Like, what is this? Like, why are they being forced to get to the left? Like, these guys should be the ones leading the charge. What's the story? Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. Climate and societal collapse is more likely to happen before a worker united revolution. Sadly, this is my belief. Dude, you and most of your viewers are kick-ass. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that, bud. And it's absolutely true. The chat is a real treat. I'm so grateful that you guys are always showing up. I'm so grateful for the viewership that I have. I'm so grateful that you guys are here to be in solidarity and to believe in what we're doing here. Because what we are doing is building a solidarity group. And to do what must be done. Which isn't incremental reformism or electoralism or any of that. It's to surround the halls of power. Because nothing will happen otherwise. These elected officials don't care. They're not interested in moving any of that. There's a banality about them. Like, if we elect these guys and then don't actually pressure them in serious ways, why should they do any work? Right? Like, if they get elected, like, the hard work is getting elected. Seems to me like for these guys, governing is just putting up your heels. occasionally showing up in the house and saying a speech or something. Right? These guys don't want to do hard work. They're not interested in that. It's just a social club for them. Well, yeah, because the Worker United Revolution, like, these guys still think that they can make it happen through their electoral politics. And it's just, like, not working. And it's really obvious that it's not working. Like, we have to surround the halls of power. There's nothing left. Like, there's nothing left. And honestly, that conversation I just had with Andrew just convinced me even more that the NDP are a dead end. Like, this pathetic belief in incremental reformism, while there's literally famines, droughts, flooding. Like, this incremental reformism has bought us failure. It's bought us nothing short of total failure. And if this is what the NDP is going to regurgitate, if this is what it's going to vomit out, like, keep losing election, losers. Ugh. You know what? Let's close with some music. Let's close with some music. Let's close with a song. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point in feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes to sweep me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's safe. No one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to Eden. Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. And even now, I still believe that we can do it. Even now. And I will always believe. Even as the fascists take power, even as the famines spread, even as the place begins to burn down, I will always believe. Because I believe that the power of the earth is much greater than the power of humanity. That this place was a garden before we even got here. It was made to be a garden. It was made before we were made to live in it, to be the beings that carried the voice of the earth in the great quest to ask the simple question, what the hell is this anyway? That the earth is more than capable of healing itself if we just allow it to. If we just treat it like an ally instead of as an object. And the path forward is so absurdly simple that no one wants to admit it. That truly, all we have to do is stop. We don't need to invent something. We don't need to sell something. We don't need to create something. We just need to stop. This is all temporary. Good to see you, Yetis. Demand better, Major. Glad to hear that you got out to some live music, Major. Good for you, bud. This is all temporary. that this too will pass, that humanity's struggling with itself to understand itself and its own place is just a baby squalling in its mother's arms. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, living in quantum energy. The oligarchs are doing everything they can and spending as much as they possibly can to make sure you'll never realize it, so you'll just stay the good little commodity that they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.